Communicating with guests. This lesson will focus on the 3 stages of interacting with guests from behind the bar and how to communicate throughout each of these stages. In this lesson, you will need to make use of all the knowledge you have gained throughout the previous lessons. You will need to have the correct body language. You will need to avoid making common mistakes, and you will have to include what you have learnt when it comes to communicating with colleagues. So let's list the 3 different stages of interaction with guests at the bar. The first stage is to acknowledge the guest who wants to place an order. The second stage is to listen to their order and what they have to say. The third and final stage is to then answer them and present their drink when giving it to them. Let's learn about acknowledging the guest. The very first thing that will take place between you and a guest is when they approach you and want to place an order with you. At this point, you need to acknowledge them, which means letting them know that you've seen them. This can happen in 2 different circumstances. Firstly, when the bar is incredibly busy. When this is the case, lots of guests will be trying to get your attention, and you will be incredibly busy. In this kind of situation, you need to do your best to acknowledge your guests without stopping what you're doing. If you are quite a distance from the guest who is trying to get your attention, simply smile and nod, letting them know that you've noticed them and showing that you will get to them soon. If you are closer to them, you can smile and say something like, "I will be with you very shortly, sir." Probably the biggest challenge of a busy bar is remembering who should be served when. The golden rule is that whichever guest arrives first needs to be served first. Whoever arrives second then needs to be served second, and so on, just like in a queue. Do your best to remember who needs to be served if service is busy. Now let's look at when the bar is quiet. In this situation, when the guest either arrives at the bar or calls for you, make sure you go over to them and greet them. Something like, "Good afternoon, Mum. What can I help you with today?" is absolutely perfect. This way, they know that you are giving them your undivided attention and that they can then place their order with you. Now we can move on to taking the order. Once you have acknowledged the guest and are standing in front of them, it is time to listen to them and take their order. This is the most important part of communicating with your guests, as they are here to get a drink from you, and if you don't listen properly, you will get their order wrong. When taking orders for certain drinks, you'll need specific information to make it to the guest's preference. Think of a cocktail, for example. Some cocktails can either be shaken or stirred, depending on the guest's preference. If you don't listen to the guests when they are placing their order, you won't know how to prepare it or which questions to ask. Take a few seconds to write down what your body language needs to be like when taking a guest's order. A. You need to have an upright posture. B. You must make eye contact with the guest. C. You must smile and be happy to help them. And lastly, D. Remember to not point with your finger, but to motion with your hands if necessary. Let's finish off by looking at answering the guest. Once the guest has placed their order with you, you need to then answer them and always use their name if you know it. Using the guest's name is one of the most important things you can do when interacting with them. It is professional and lets them know that you are ready to serve them. Once the guest has placed their order, we need to repeat the order back to them. This is because it allows you to make 100% sure that you heard the order and preparation method correctly. It is very important to not only repeat the order, but also how the guest wants it prepared, if this is necessary. For example, 1 shaken apple martini, Mrs. Adams. It's on its way. If you don't have the necessary ingredients to prepare the drink, have run out of stock, or your establishment doesn't serve what the guest is looking for, you will need to tell the guest politely, along with making a suggestion for something that is similar to what they ordered. An example would be, "I'm very sorry, Mr. Jones, but unfortunately we don't stock Heineken beer. May I offer you an ice-cold Peroni instead?" Finally, when you are finished preparing the drink and are going to give it to the guest, make sure that you present it to them by telling them what it is and how it was prepared, if this is necessary. For example, your refreshing shaken apple martini, Mrs. Adams. Enjoy it. Well done on completing this lesson on communicating with guests.